Next speaker is Dave Bukovinsky. He's the Executive Director of Product Management at CSG. Dave oversees the company's customer experience cloud-based solution portfolio. He is a digital transformation specialist with more than 25 years experience in technology, spanning companies such as Motorola, Microsoft, Lumen, TTEC, and Intuit. Today, Dave helps propel CSG's mission of improving customer experience in today's omni-channel world, something we just touched on, providing leadership in developing and deploying CX solutions in place of customer front and center to every engagement. So Dave, welcome. If you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And I definitely appreciate the opportunity to share some insights and some learnings, definitely from our perspective. This is definitely an emerging field, even though it feels like it's been around 6 years. I think the last couple of years have seen tremendous changes. Definitely appreciate the groundwork that Mark and Pierre kind of started the conference off with. I think they highlighted some key issues, and the audience has actually raised some good questions. For better or for worse, I'm hoping to address a couple of those questions. And let me see when you can see my presentation. So today I want to talk about the attributes of a successful conversational AI program. We've covered off already this morning on some of the technology, some of the key aspects of the underlying technology. I'm going to focus a little more on, as a company approaches looking at conversational AI, what should they be considering as they think about implementing something like this within their enterprise? So I want to start with kind of what I consider 3 key pillars when an enterprise is thinking about going down a conversational AI or chatbot program. One is ensuring that business objectives are aligned across the enterprise. We've heard a lot about expense reduction and CSAT today, but there's also revenue opportunities involved in deploying this sort of technology and use cases. The second is making sure you choose the right partner. So you definitely have got, you've got the technology selection to make, but then you've got a series of decisions even under that around how you're going to deploy the technology, how you're going to support it. We heard a little bit about IBM Watson, Google Dialogflow. So there's some key differences and decisions that have to be made about where the line stops between your partner and where it starts between what your IT shop is going to do, as well as your business operations. And then finally, a phased implementation. We've seen companies that either start out with too small of a use case and it ends up being very underwhelming and it gets defunded because ROI isn't shown. And then the other end of the spectrum, we see companies start out with one of the most complex use cases that spans voice, SMS, social media channels, and it takes 2 years to implement. And again, it never fully comes to fruition. So I think there's a happy balance there, and that's what I want to talk through a little bit today. So let's talk about aligned business objectives. We see a lot of inquiries and a lot of case studies and a lot of work going on that kind of starts in the customer care function. And I think that's pretty easy to understand why, right? Because that's where you can see cost reductions. If you can deflect calls out of the contact center through a web chat, through an SMS chat, et cetera. That's an easy ROI to prove. It's easy to model, and you can see results fairly soon. The challenge with that is the customer experience sits in other departments in the company, right? The customer experience sits in billing operations. It sits in customer acquisition. It sits in customer onboarding. So one thing to think about is wherever the impetus starts for a conversational AI program, make sure that you're pulling it up at least a level above so that you can pull in all of the other organizations that touch the customer so that you have this unified experience across and not just within the customer care function. Then you've got kind of what I consider 3 core benefits that companies can achieve from deploying a CAI-based platform and technology. You have expense reduction, which we've touched upon a little bit today. Revenue expansion, that, Pierre mentioned, consumers will leave a brand if they have a bad experience. He did, I have, all of you probably have. So churn reduction, if you can provide a better customer experience, and what Jeff said, let them self-service in the channel they want, right? Don't make them call somebody if they don't want to talk to somebody. That level of satisfaction will keep you with a brand. Whereas if you encounter friction every time you need to interact with that brand, then you're probably going to be prone to leave. The other thing I want to touch upon is the ability to scale the business. So I'm going to cover a use case a little later in the presentation, but it was front and center during the pandemic where there was a nationwide fast food chain that rapidly had to pivot to taking orders by phone, right? Could you order online? Sure. But a subset of people still like to call the restaurant and order by phone. Well, when you have 2 phone lines into the restaurant and you have 1 employee taking phone orders, you can quickly see how that's going to be a bottleneck. So we're going to talk about a use case that we put together that enabled them to scale. Scale's been a theme today as well, so that you're not dependent on a human and a telephone line. And then finally, improve CSAT or customer experience. This is a common goal of everybody, but honestly, I have yet to see where a funding decision has been made solely on this, right? This is a desired outcome, but the business cases that we see still have to have some underlying either revenue benefit or expense benefit in order to get funded and in order to kick off the program. So those are some key tenets around business objectives, and it's important that the head of every organization that touches a customer is part of this team that is aligning around what are the benefits we want to get out of this program, what is the first one, the second one, the third one, and it will be a sequenced and a phased implementation, right? You're not going to see churn reduction on day 1, but you might see call deflection on day 1. Churn reduction might take 6 to 12 months to actually prove out and measure the analytics. But I think it's important to be very explicit with all the business owners around what they're looking to do with this technology and how they want to phase it and see the benefits to the business. So now let's talk about partners. It was a great question earlier around IBM Watson. We run into opportunities where companies have started with either Watson or Dialogflow, and they've realized that they need a team of data scientists, linguistics experts, they need conversational dialogue design experts, a range of expertise, because Watson and Google Dialogflow and others give you a great toolbox to build an NLP-based conversational AI, but that's just what it is. It's a toolbox, right? Pierre kind of mentioned how their platform is easy to deploy. It can be used by business analysts. That's a key decision that I think every enterprise has to make. How much of this do you want to own? How much do you want to invest in resourcing the right skill sets to build on top of a platform versus how much do you want your partner to come to you with a very easy to use but powerful platform that doesn't require the same level of investment? And obviously you might give up a little bit of control and some flexibility. So finding where that sliding scale is for you as an enterprise is really key, right? Because that's going to dictate your investment level internally, is going to dictate which partner you choose from a platform perspective. And then it's going to dictate how much you own versus how much of it might be a managed service. And then Jeff and others talked about, Mark especially, about some of the key attributes, right? He talked about intent recognition. So probably 9 out of 10 times, any chatbot that I interact with personally will understand one intent, right? If I try to do something like, can you check my checking account balance and transfer $500 to savings if it's above $1,000? The majority of chatbots can't handle that, right? That's a multi-intent recognition. There are platforms out there that can. So make sure that when you're thinking through your use cases and how much you want to invest and where you want to go with this, do you want the richest platform that can handle the most complex queries? Or is it really sufficient for where you're at now to have what I'll call it a dumb bot, but it's really a single intent recognition FAQ-based chatbot, right? You might still be able to deploy it across different channels, but it's really only going to handle things like what are your store hours, check my account balance, when is my bill due, right? Things like that. So there's some really, really cool examples out there of multi-intent. chatbots and conversational AI, and they can handle super complex use cases. But again, it's where that investment level is versus the benefit that you're looking to get out. So there is no right answer. It's more what is going to be aligned with what your business objectives are. Contextual awareness. So I loved some of the conversation around this. And I think there's two types of contextual awareness. One is the contextual awareness of the current conversation. So if I'm talking to a chatbot and I'm talking about traveling to Rome and making a reservation, and I say I'd like to upgrade my seat, right? It obviously knows that that's in the context of the airline ticket that I'm in the process of reserving and paying for, and not necessarily the cab ride to the airport or the train I'm going to take once I'm there. So having some context around kind of the realm that you're talking about really helps the chatbot be a little more intelligent about trying to interpret your intent and trying to service it. The second type of contextual awareness really is around long-term contextual awareness. And here you might get into a customer data platform integration so that the next time I come to chat to a chatbot, it actually knows me, right? To Mark's point earlier, can a chatbot actually know me? Can it know where I've been, what I've done, past conversations I've had, and will my next conversation with it take all of that into account? So I still think we're really, really in the early days of that element of it. And then finally, channel support, right? We talked about channel support languages. Do you want to deploy this across multiple channels? Typically, a really robust conversational AI platform, you build it once, then you add languages like Pira mentioned with very little effort, and then you add channels. So it really doesn't matter if you communicate across chat, across a voice IVR, across a smart speaker like Alexa. It's all the same core engine running in the background. So it should be really easy to incrementally add channels as you go. Okay, so I know I'm covering a lot of information quick. So kind of the third pillar is this phased implementation approach. And this is not an exhaustive list of research that we feel companies should do, but it's certainly a starting point. And we find that typically companies will pick one or two of these research categories and form the basis of their business plan around that. I think that's a little short-sighted. And again, it doesn't pull in all other business owners across the company. So I think you really need to look at customer feedback across a variety of sources, and then even determine should you involve a consulting partner, or does the partner that you chose have a consulting agency that can actually go out and do customer interviews? We're all aware of the bias of survey respondents, right? So to get away from that bias a little bit, you really might want to consider doing real customer interviews where you're selecting the customers versus customers self-selecting. All of this data is key to kind of play into what are the use cases, what are your sequencing of use cases, and how much are you willing to fund versus the ROI that you expect back. Excuse me. And then finally, we recommend starting out with a single channel. The simplest channel, obviously, is probably like a web chat or an SMS, moving all the way up to voice. So we definitely recommend testing it, picking a simpler use case, and it might be something as simple as what are your store hours, or a single intent action like that. What's my account balance? But it gets your team familiar with the technology. It allows you to see how well it's performing, what the impact on customer experience is. And then every 90 days after that is when you should be ramping and adding additional use cases. All right, so 3 things that we see go wrong in some of the customer opportunities that we've pursued or looked at from a CSG perspective. So, I keep mentioning the business case. Again, if a business case is driven solely off of customer care and call deflection, that's going to inform what technology and what partner and everything else you choose, as well as what budget. You can also have unrealistic ROI expectations in year 1. So we don't generally recommend that you look for a positive ROI initially in year 1. There's just too much new technology, too much new integrations, and honestly, just too much learning going on, not only for you, but your customers as well. And then make sure you bake in your business case some way to measure impact on revenue, because every CAI deployment we've seen has some positive impact on revenue, but it's often overlooked because analytics aren't put in place to actually kind of do that before after comparison. So we strongly recommend that that's part of your business case. Next is lack of domain knowledge. So we recently got an RFP that we almost felt like rewriting that RFP, I'll be honest with you, because the people that wrote it had a cursory understanding of conversational AI and what the capabilities were and what the use cases that should be targeted. So make sure that if you're going to go down this path, that you have access to the right resources to actually scope out what you want to do and to go out and do the market assessment, the partner assessment, the business case, et cetera. And if you don't have that in-house, there's plenty of consulting agencies around that are emerging as kind of experts and kind of the Switzerland in this space. And then also use cases, right? We've all had very, very bad examples of asking a simple question to a chatbot and immediately wants to transfer us to an agent, right? Even though it was a super simple use case. So make sure you're choosing the right use cases that are based on the integrations in your back office systems that can actually fulfill the intent that they're trying to satisfy. And make sure that even if it's a simple use case, it can completely cover that use case for the consumer. And then finally, I've touched a little bit on ownership. In an ideal world, I'd love to see a chief customer officer at every company kind of own every aspect of the customer experience. A lot of companies aren't there yet. So you've got customer experience buried, as I mentioned before, in business operations and onboarding and marketing and customer care. And it's really important that if you're going to embark on a conversational AI program that's going to touch the customer at multiple points in the life cycle, that this is a working group across all those different functions, even if the funding might be coming out of customer care, out of marketing, or wherever. Ensuring alignment across those different business silos is really key. And then again, we talked about the limited focus business case. So make sure you're considering all the different elements that we've talked about and that you're going to hear about later today from other speakers in your business case, because those are all positive contributors to the business and justify the expense. And then finally, to kind of wrap up, I just want to give you some examples of use cases that we've seen around multi-intent, contextually aware conversational AI chatbots. And these opportunities have been both digital channels as well as voice. So in the voice context, you can use Lex and Poly from AWS, right, to do that text to speech to text. You can use Google Dialogflow. The good news is that there's a lot of cloud-based speech engines that you can integrate into your conversational AI, and it provides that seamless human voice experience. So I talked about the automated food ordering, right? You have this national fast food chain that all of a sudden curbside pickup is the only thing you can do. You can't go in and order. So it's got to be on the web or over the phone. Well, they lost business. Did they know how much they lost? No, because they couldn't track the number of incoming calls they had that ended up getting a fast busy. But that was a perfect example where if you had a conversational AI that understood their menu, that understood what to upsell on that menu and could actually take payments as well, they actually could have handled the scale of curbside takeaway requests a lot better. Another client that we've been working with, auto parts inventory, right? Why should I have to call and talk to a human, take them away from servicing a customer to find out if they have a water pump for a 57 Chevy? I should be able to call and just ask via natural language processing, hey, I need a water pump for what, a 57 Chevy? Okay, is it this model or this model? Yep, we have one in stock. Would you like to reserve it and or pay for it? Great, pick it up at curbside takeaway, right? Another use case, which seems a little more mundane, but provides some measurable ROI fairly quickly, is optimized call routing. So we had a customer who the number of transfers between sales and support and then between subgroups was astronomical. People weren't following the IVR prompts. So we actually put in a voice-based intent recognition front end to their IVR, and we're able to route calls a lot more efficiently and actually demonstrate measurable improvements in callers getting to the right agent the first time. And then I'm not going to go through last three in detail. I know I'm running up against my time, but travel reservation. So there's some really sophisticated use cases around creating a complex travel itinerary that involves airlines, hotels, upgrades, time of day, car rentals, all of that can all be handled through a conversational AI platform integrated with a travel reservation system in the background. So this is kind of the futuristic use cases that we're starting to see emerge, but we're still proponents of starting small and growing over time. So I think, Jeff, with that, I'm at my 20 minutes, so I'll kind of stop there. That was my last slide.
Good, thank you, Dave. That was really terrific. 1 minute left. We've got a quick question. If we can do a quick answer from Salvatore Segura Ortega. This might be too big for this. What we have left. How do we hyper personalize user experience through a chatbot, or what are the right triggers to hand off to a live agent? Something that you had mentioned.
Yeah, that's definitely a big question. I will touch upon one thing. So we are in the very early days of. So if you look at customer data platforms, those are repositories of every touch point, every experience a customer's had with you, normalized, and those have not to date really been tied into chatbot platforms. But if you're going to personalize an interaction through a chatbot, you have to not only know what the customer has done with you before, but potentially, if you look at a company like Newstar or others, you might want to pull in third-party data about what I've been doing on social media, the car I just bought, the fact that I just got married, right? And then you can use that to personalize that interaction. But I think we're still in the early days, from my perspective, of having access to enough data that's normalized that you can pull into that conversation. But I think that's where the excitement is going forward.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Concise. Thank you, Dave. That was terrific. It was good stuff.
Great, thanks, Jeff.